And during those 18 years, there's only a few of those years that you can truly, we traveled the world, we pulled them out of school, we moved to another country, we did these things that time has come and gone. And if I would have missed it, there's no getting that back. And so, so that's kind of a key part of the entrepreneurial journey, is understanding what these priorities are. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have this skewed definition of what an entrepreneur is and what success is.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry's seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about.
Yes.
Your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Hitting the brand voice runway today is Mac Lackey. Mac created something called ExitDNA and the ExitDNA Helix. And even though it has the word exit in it, it isn't just about exiting your business. It's about having options and trying to plan for the best possible outcomes that you want in your life. And he also has a book called Creating the Exit Opportunity, which I believe is currently free to people who are interested in learning more about it. It's exitdna.com/book, but we'll put all that in the show notes. Anyway, Mac, thank you so much for coming on Brand Voice Runway.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. One thing that I wanted to hit right out of the gate is this concept that it isn't just about exit. It isn't just about getting out. And I hope you'll share also some of your story, because I know the book is from your perspective and how you ended up, getting home for dinner every night with creating 6-8-figure businesses. So, I don't know how that works. I do actually have some insight into it in terms of, but go ahead, tell us about how it's more than the exit strategy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I discovered on the journey is that when you start optimizing your business so that you have the option to exit, and really what that means to me is you have your T's crossed, your I's dotted, you're very articulate about the value you've created, you understand what type of buyers would be interested in your business. When you've done all of those things so that you really have the option, another powerful thing happens, which is everything short of selling 100% of your company is now available to you. So in theory, if someone wants to buy 100% of your business because they think you've created value, you're organized, you're ready, you're prepared, all those things are done, then as an entrepreneur, you can say, you know what, I'd actually just like to sell a portion of my business and maybe take some capital off the table, or maybe I want to raise some growth equity, or maybe just some venture money to get to the next level, because organizing for an exit is the most kind of challenging or kind of extreme outcome. So anything short of that is easier and more available. So if you prepare for that option, everything else is now available to you. So to me, it's almost like a powerful kind of hack, if you will, to everything else that you might want to do, including just deciding to keep the business yourself, have some more personal freedom because you've done such a good job optimizing. That is also available to you. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with that comment.
Now, when people go into business, they start a business, one presumes there's some passion behind it, some huge passion that's driving them. What they want out of it may be way beyond what the business itself produces, but is there a little bit of a stigma sometimes of someone who's put their heart and soul into a feeling like they're letting their baby go, they're selling out,
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I agree. There is definitely, I almost look at it like two different types of entrepreneurs. And I'm clearly in one camp, which is the entrepreneur that likes to create things, likes to build it, likes to scale it, but is also very happy to monetize the opportunity or just be opportunistic. If I think there's some compelling reason that I need or want to sell my business, that generally overshadowed maybe a personal passion for the subject matter for me. There is another entrepreneur who the business is their baby, is their identity. And those in some ways are a little bit more challenging because nobody wants to buy a business where the founder is in the critical path of every decision and has to be in every meeting. And so naturally, the type of entrepreneur that can extract themselves and design a business that looks attractive to third parties also becomes a more efficient business. And that's one of the things that really led to a lot of personal freedom for me along my journey is I was so focused on having a business that was attractive and optimized that I would wake up some days and realize the business happens without me. Meetings happen whether I go into the office or not. If I choose to leave, as I personally did at 5 o'clock to have dinner with my daughters, nothing fell short. And that was a powerful realization that not only I think led to creating better businesses, creating exits, but certainly gave me a substantially better quality of life. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting in my apartment in Barcelona right now, and like my business and life runs pretty consistently, whether I'm in the US, whether I'm in Barcelona, whether I'm traveling. And so I really think that's an important variable that entrepreneurs need to grasp. And if they're holding their business too tightly, if it's too much of their baby, they not only fail to create the exit, they really hurt their chances at personal freedom as well.
What is the first step in stepping back from the process a little bit? Like when can that happen? How does it happen?
I think the biggest thing is technically it's a leap. I mean, you have to make the decision that I'm going to prioritize other things, whether that's family, which was a decision I made. It could be personal health. You want to be, working out and getting out in the outdoors. Whatever it is, you have to say that other thing is equally as important to the business, and I'm going to take action. So for me, literally, when my first daughter was born back in August of 2000, I made a commitment to her, and she was a baby and didn't even know what I was saying, but I just said, look, I'm going to be not only home for dinner, I'm going to coach your soccer team. I'm going to carve the pumpkins. I'm going to come to your plays in the middle of the day. And what that meant practically was almost the next day when I showed up to the office, we were sitting in a meeting in the conference room. I'm running the meeting. I looked down at my watch. It's about 4:45. And I'm like, all right, I literally I was holding the microphone, handed it to someone else and said, I'm headed home. And I think that first day, most people were in shock. Like, is he kidding? Is he literally leaving in the middle of a meeting? I stood up and walked out the door. Within a week, not only was I walking out the door, the most important thing happened, which is everyone anticipated, what if Mac's not here? Who's going to run the meeting? Who's going to have the notes? Who's going to handle the call since Mac's not in the office? And so my team started to professionalize, take more responsibility, take more accountability. So I believe the hardest part as an entrepreneur is truly kind of stepping off the cliff to say, I'm going to walk out the door. Maybe everything doesn't go perfectly, probably won't the first time, maybe not the first 5 times, but it will never happen unless you make that decision and take action. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind as you were speaking. One is that, yeah, you have to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. You have to make that priority, intransigent, and then you're forced to come up with a solution. Then it's like, okay, well, Mac's not going to be here, so we're going to have to do something. And
Exactly.
then the other thing is that I think there's probably some insecurity that comes with being a founder sometimes, where you're like, okay, what if I'm not needed anymore?
Right.
Not that the business will fall apart, but the opposite. What if they don't need me at all? Is my self-image, am I so secure in being a dad that's all that matters? Or is it, so, with you, you had this idea that this is what you wanted to do, but what preceded that?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I mean, I don't ever, when you look backwards, it's easy to see the good things and kind of pick and choose. I mean, the reality is up until August of 2000, I had built and sold two companies in my 20s, two 8-figure exits, but those businesses were associated with me working 80+ hour weeks,
Right.
sleeping on the floor in the office. I mean, just grinding. And I knew that it was kind of impossible for the way I thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I really thought, what entrepreneurs do is work incredibly hard, create value, but just drink coffee and grind. And then I was at this moment where I said, all right, well, if I'm going to be a good dad to this new baby girl, that entrepreneur doesn't really align. Like, you can't work 80, 90 hours a week and, be there for dinner at 5 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
And so I just made the decision that was the priority. And I had to reinvent to some degree what an entrepreneur meant to me, because my definition was this kind of workaholic grinder. And all of a sudden I said, maybe entrepreneur means personal freedom, my terms, my decisions, and so when I made that kind of mental switch, things started to click. But it's not, for most entrepreneurs, including myself, it's not like you hit a switch and it just feels great. It was definitely, I'm not sure how this is going to work because all I know how to do is work hard. And I'm basically telling myself that in order to be a great dad and husband and other things I care about, I'm going to have to be more available to my family than I ever have been before. So it's a transition. I think it is for almost everyone. What I'm here to tell people, and I really feel like I'm shouting from the rooftops, is that little girl at, August of 2000, I dropped off for her freshman year at NYU a few years ago. And after that, I built and sold 4 more companies, but I never missed anything. I did every Donuts for Dad and every play in the afternoon. And so I know for a fact, not only is it doable, it's a better way to build a business, and certainly a better way to live your life, And so I think that kind of definition that a lot of entrepreneurs have of, I just have to work hard and sacrifice my health and my life and my family until I make it, is just wrong. And so that's really important for me to say.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that what I'm learning in this phase of my life, I've had bigger agencies, and this is probably the smallest unit that I've ever been. But I feel like, in a way, okay, I'm going to go do that next thing where I start to step back from other things, but I'm also building something. So it's, it does require attention, but I feel like I have to be willing to break rules. Like, I can't be beholden to anybody's idea of what success is or what's going to make a success. If I can dig deeper and just find that thing and go, I'm going to just do that. I'm going to do that because that feels right. Because otherwise you're chasing your own tail, I think, a lot of times,
I think, the word alignment always kind of goes, pops up in my mind, that it's that alignment about, what you're feeling inside. Is this authentic? Is this the way I feel a business should run? Is this the way I want to live my life? And it is I would almost call it a trap for most entrepreneurs, that the definition of an entrepreneur, the definition of success, all those things tend to come externally to us. Like, oh, well, you're truly an entrepreneur when you've made it over $1 million in revenue, or when you've raised capital, or, some arbitrary milestone. And I just believe and have tried to live, pretty true to this fact that it's really not about money. It's not about the size of the company. It's about, am I motivated, passionate, building something I care about? And am I living authentically with the priorities? And for me, those have been family and travel and some other things. And so, I could have probably made technically more money and more material success, but it would have come at the cost of time with my family. And that time, especially at this point in my life, I have a daughter that first daughter just graduated from college. My second one's in college. You have 18 years and that's it. I mean,
yeah,
and during those 18 years, there's only a few of those years that you can truly, we traveled the world, we pulled them out of school, we moved to another country, we did these things that time has come and gone. And if I would have missed it, there's no getting that back. And so, so that's kind of a key part of the entrepreneurial journey, is understanding what these priorities are. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have this skewed definition of what an entrepreneur is and what success is.
Yeah, well said. And now we get to the kind of the second half of our interview, which is about brand voice, because that's how I hadn't planned that it would be that way, but I find with all these episodes, I'm getting to know the person, I'm getting to see what makes them tick. Then we talk about their brand voice, and the company can well be bigger than one person, but there's a person behind every company. There's no such thing as a company that just invented itself. It doesn't happen. So when you talk about brand voice and ExitDNA has a DNA, how do you describe it?
Yeah, it's actually I agree with you 100%. And I think it's an important point about, what a brand represents. And the term, or the name ExitDNA, came in 2018. I had just sold my 6th company. I was looking back over all the years of some good things that I'd done, some successes, but also, a lot of mistakes I'd made. And I noticed that there was this point in every company that I ultimately sold, that when I really started, myself and my partners started thinking about creating that option to exit, a lot of really, really positive things changed. One was, we ultimately had a business that was sellable. My personal freedom tended to shoot up. A lot of times our businesses scaled faster. But the other thing that was going through my mind at the time is, and this from the agency world, a lot of executives or entrepreneurs will go to like offsite retreats and do mission, vision, core values, and they come back all excited and they're talking about it. But ultimately they, print them, they put them on the wall of the conference room, and they don't live by any of them. They're just like framed pictures.
Right.
And I used to say in my companies, in order for something to really matter and stick, we have to weave it into the fabric or the DNA of the business. It has to be woven in. It can't just be on the wall. And so when I started thinking about ExitDNA and what I wanted to do with this second part of my life, I thought, I need to help people understand that weaving these concepts of creating exit options into the DNA of how they build their business, how they manage their time, how they talk about what they've created, how they interact with key stakeholders. It's literally at the DNA of the business level that these things start to change. And so that's where the name came from. And the other thing that happens, maybe not surprisingly, given what we've already discussed, is people join ExitDNA from all over the world. And there's probably, I don't know the percentage, but maybe 50% of them that are truly trying to create an exit in the next 1 to 5 years, let's say. They want to sell their business. There's another 50% that just the way I have chosen to live my life, build my businesses, is resonating. And they say, I'm not sure if I want to exit, but I certainly want to create more personal freedom while I still scale my company, while I create optionality. How do I do that? And so I think a lot of what ExitDNA is me sharing these concepts to help people kind of, get it into the fabric or the DNA of their business and their lives.
It is a challenge, and that's a great way to look at it, because it isn't an end unto itself. It's a transition. It's a step. It's, maybe one of the most important things, should be done with the most kind of personalized care and, intent, and not be like just a thing that has to happen or is done in some kind of hurry,
Right.
And then we do a little pre-interview, and you mentioned, one of the challenges is kind of getting that through to your audience. You do a newsletter, I'm a big advocate for that kind of communication. I feel like it's in many ways better than advertising. They want to be part of the community, but what is the challenge? What's the challenge getting through?
I think there are two challenges for me personally. And, I've been pretty open and candid about this, but I spent 25, 26 years as a heads down entrepreneur. And during those, 25 plus years, there were two things in my life, my family and whatever business I was building. I was very heads in the sand. The day before a Super Bowl, I couldn't even tell you who was playing. Like, I didn't know what was going on in the world. So I lift my head up in 2018 for the first time really in my working life and say, okay, I've had my exits. I really want to help people. And so there's two problems. One is people don't know who I am, right? I didn't ever create a social media presence. I didn't talk about myself. I didn't go to conferences. I just was a heads down entrepreneur that happened to have 6 exits and some success.
Right.
And so one is, in order for people to know, like, and trust you, they have to start with know. And so I have to get the word out that I'm here to help people. And then the second thing I think is the perception, perhaps that, I only should speak to Mac or join ExitDNA when I've decided I'm going to sell my company. And that is, in my opinion, way too late. As a matter of fact, the number one reason I say no to people joining ExitDNA is when they say, I need to sell my business. I'd like to be out and put a quick date on it. I say, hey, great. Congratulations. I'm happy to introduce you to brokers. Like, that's not what I do. Because if you're waiting until you really need to sell it, it's too late to do all the things that we help people do, which is simple, actionable steps they can take, which compound into value over time. If you're ready to go to the exit door right away, you've kind of missed that window. So I really, really like when people join, not even sure if they want to exit. If they do, it's probably a few years in the future. They just really want to optimize things so they have options. That's the perfect scenario. But I have to, get the word out and explain that to people. It's not about coming to Mac or ExitDNA when you're ready to exit. It's well before that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something right there to what you just said. It's don't wait until you're ready to exit to join ExitDNA is like
Exactly.
a kind of is kind of the message,
Yeah.
And I think the community that you've created, your image and all of that is what that fabric that we talk about is really about. Are there any, now I already know from talking to you, I could tell some of the things that you weren't so thrilled about your previous work habits. So if I were to ask you, what would you do over again? You might say, I wouldn't wait so long to change, although you probably learned a tremendous amount, but you don't get the time back. You're right.
Yeah.
But giving advice to young entrepreneurs, young founders, especially in today's world. And when you talk about brand and building something, any advice you'd share?
Yeah, I think maybe two things pop to mind. Number one is that I really think about it now. A lot of times I talk about life wealth or building a scaled life, not a scaled business. That's something I learned the hard way, as you said. I mean, I don't really regret those decisions. Number one, I was really young. I didn't really lose that much in terms of, I didn't have kids yet. I was newly married. My wife might have enjoyed a little bit more time early, but
Yeah.
I didn't really sacrifice a lot early on other than just my own, time. But I know, particularly when I'm working with younger or first time entrepreneurs, that's a trade-off people don't need to make and shouldn't make. And so I'm pretty clear on that in my mind. The other thing is that the definition around when everybody thinks about exits, almost universally, the first thing that happens is they start looking at financials and numbers. They start talking about where their revenue is, where their profits are, what kind of multiples there are in their business. And to me, that is important, but it's a foundation on top of where the real value is built, which is the strategic value you've created. And so from day one as an entrepreneur, I want entrepreneurs and founders thinking about what is it that I'm creating that's powerful and unique, and who in the world cares about that? Not only potential customers, but potential strategic partners, potential investors, potential buyers down the road. And the more clear we get on that, the more likely we are to have great alignment between, I'm building something incredibly valuable here. It doesn't matter how much revenue I'm doing. If I've got something that other people want, that's worth something, right? And so I think really helping people from the earliest phase understand that. And brands is one of those things, right? There are companies that have very little revenue, almost no profit. The brand is so powerful. It resonates so well with the target market that big companies, Fortune 500, say, you know what? We need to buy that brand so we can rebrand our own products. Like that brand is more powerful than some of the things we already own. And so brand, intellectual property, trademarks, those kind of things are incredibly valuable and strategic. But oftentimes, if we're not careful, we just get slid over on a little list like, okay, yeah, we own a trademark for this and a copyright for that. It's like, no, that is the value, right? That's one of the things that should be on the primary list of what you've created. And that can start from day one.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.